So we all know that we're supposed to write down our goals, but is the way that you're going about your goals holding you back from reaching the success that you desire and the success that you deserve for that matter? It's easy to look at people that are, very outgoing and wish you had those skills, or those people that can sit down and focus or have a great memory or remember names and wish you had those skills. And this is really part of the neurology, is part of the way that the brain works, and it can have a big impact on how you go about your goals, how you set your goals, and ultimately if you succeed in your goals or not. I'm Dr. Jeff Cumro. I'm a developmental functional neurologist, and we focus on improving the functionality of the brain, improving the connection of the brain, so that when you need different function or need different parts of the brain to fire in a different environment to succeed, you ultimately have that. And with that, we work with patients with autism or ADHD, or those who are really just chasing after success, CEOs, entrepreneurs, things like that. So, really looking back at this, when we look at psychology, they have two types of goal behavior. We either have approach or we have avoidance. When we approach something, we are going after the reward. We are going after the goal. If we're avoiding something, obviously we don't want to do it. And that can be a multitude of things. And we all have both of these throughout our psychology. But most of us have one side that we bias more than others. And if we look at society in general, we see that fear-based motivation is more common than approach-based. There are multiple ways of looking at this. So if you ask somebody what their goals are, most people are able to very clearly elucidate exactly what they do not want in their life. But when you ask them what they do want, they really can't draw that out. They can't just grab it and tell you what they want. They have to really sit there and think. And in a lot of cases, they have to take a lot of time with this. It's something that they have to sit down and really put focus on, because a lot of people don't know what they really want. The other way of looking at this is, when we look at psychological experiments, we see that people are more likely to fear the loss of something that they currently have than they are the gain of something that they don't have. So again, we are more avoidant based in our behavior than we are reward based. So what does this look like in nature? Approach behavior would be more like when you're hungry. And I'm not talking about like when you just want some food. I'm talking about like legit hungry, you need to eat some food. When this happens, you start going into a scavenger-like mode. You start, getting a little bit more focused attention. You start having a little bit more motivation, a little bit more drive to succeed. You have a little bit more aggression in you, because if you need to attack something or you need to fight something off for that meal, you want that available there. And a lot of this lies in the left prefrontal cortex. When we look at something like depression, and we can talk either clinical or subclinical depression on this, it doesn't make any difference. When you're trying to, avoid doing something, you have, lower motivation, you have increased pain, you have more emotional ability, mood swings, you have a little bit more, reflection on how your own feelings of things are, a little bit more internally based on this. And all of that is right-sided dominant. We see a lot more insular cortex, we see a lot more prefrontal cortex firing in these cases. So either one can, like I said, we have either one throughout the day, but we tend to approach things more in one way than we do in the other. And this can be very, very important, because when we go to achieve our goals, are we more fear-based? Are we more reward-based? You can help approach things a little bit more appropriately if you know how you act in those situations. So if you are more fear-based, you're more likely to say, this is what I do not want in life, and this is what I have to do to avoid that. That's good, right? That might help you out. If you're more reward-based, you're going to say, this is what I want in life, and this is what I'm going to have to do to get it. That's going to work well for you. And there's tons of books in the bookstore that talk about these types of things. The problem with looking at the psychology of all of this is that it depends on the underlying neurology. If we don't have full functionality or full maturity in those functional connections underlying it, what suffers is the prefrontal cortex. And like I said, either the approach-based or the avoidant-based, we have a prefrontal cortex biased portion of that. So we have to really be able to drive that neurology and build that up to be able to use this. And the reason that you want to be able to use either of these, the more likely or the more ability you have to use those, it doesn't matter what environment you're put in. If you're put into an environment, you can only use reward-based behavior. So let's say you're faced with a bear. What is the reward for running away from the bear? You're better off having the fear-based approach, correct? We need you to just run away and survive. We need you to fear the bear eating you, run away. If you're in something that, like a business setting where you can approach a goal, there's not really any fear on that. You don't need to use that fear-based approach to reach that goal. You just have to figure out what is going to be the reward and how to get to that reward. So that's a little bit more of why this is important, but we really have to look at the underlying neurology to figure out exactly what's going on with this. So a good analogy for this is, if we look at the brain of somebody with autism or ADHD or depression, especially in the short term, there's not much difference from those who have, no diagnosis on that, whether it's autism, ADHD, depression, or whatever else. Difference between somebody with and without a diagnosis is very minimal. The longer that person has that diagnosis, the more likely you are to see some changes in there, but they're still very, very minimal. We have the hardware intact. The software is what we're really working with here, and that's where the functional connectivity really comes in. When we first are born, we have primitive reflexes that are intact. Those primitive reflexes are the primitive software. They allow us to do the things that we need to do to start developing some of that connection. But as soon as we start developing some of that connection, we should turn that other program off, get those primitive reflexes to go away. That allows for the upper level function. The more our software is updated and developed, the more functionality we have. So if we enter a prompt, we know exactly what to expect. In those that do not have as much functional maturity, they put in a prompt, and it might be the right prompt for the environment, it might be the wrong prompt for the environment. And that's where they see some of the challenges that they face. So, for example, in autism, the classic example is they have very, very advanced abilities in math, or they can tell you what day of the week any date is, no matter what year. But they have some issues with, say, social interaction. They don't do as well when they're faced with somebody else. We have to be able to put the right circumstances, the right abilities in for the right environment. So that's ultimately what we have to develop on this. We have to develop our software to that point. So as we start to do this, as we start to develop that functionality in there, we start to develop biases. If we do not have full functionality, we don't see full maturity, especially in that prefrontal cortex. When we don't have full maturity in one side and we have more maturity in the other side, we tend to bias that outcome. And this is where people end up with either very, very reward-based or very, very fear-based. And like I said, it basically just turns into a personality. It turns into a habit. That's something we have to overcome. And the great thing about the brain is it's neuroplastic. We can change the way that the brain is connected by stimulation. And if we can target that stimulation to the areas that are in need of a little bit more development, it leads to more ability in that area. As we develop more ability in that area, we can pull from either side. So if you're faced with that bear, you're able to use the fear-based goal approach system, versus if you're faced with that executive idea, you don't have as much of that fear-based. We can pull the appropriate one for the appropriate situation. So developmental milestones are something that we can use on this. Did you crawl at the right time? Did you walk at the right time? Did you start speaking at the right time? Did you read at the right time? All of those things are something that is helpful. But when we look at adults, a lot of times we don't have that. So what we have to do is we have to use functional testing. And what I really like to do is use normalized databases. So we know what the population is in this. How do you compare to the population? The reason I like that is, A, it tells us where we're at in development. And B, it also shows us progress. As we continue down this, we can look at it and say, this is where you started out, this is where you currently are, and this is where we want you to be. Are you making progress on that? It's very, very difficult to say, are you making better decisions? Are you feeling better? Are you more motivated? All of those things are very, very subjective. So when we can use these normalized databases, not only can we figure out which areas of the brain are more impactful on those things, but we can actually see if we're making progress, and we can track all of that. So, really developing that side-to-side function and tracking the progress that we're making is the ultimate goal on this. So if success and neurology and goal setting are something that you enjoy, it's something I love talking about. If you want to learn more, you can actually go to the little link on the side there. I do have a free hemispheric checklist. Like I said, if you are more right brain dominant, that it says you're going to be more fear-based in your goal setting or approach to life. If you are more left brain dominant, that is going to be more approach oriented in this. So just take that quiz. It'll help give you a little bit of idea of which type of system you're going to use. It's totally free. And if you are interested in this, obviously share it, subscribe to the channel, and obviously they've got the technology now where if you just hang out, another video that is going to be similar is going to be popping up soon.